Okay, well, voice carrier is in the phone universe, in the phone system universe, you have the three giant companies, which are Verizon in America. You
AT&T.
have Verizon, AT&T, and T-Mobile. T-Mobile is basically Deutsche Telekom. So that's the German telephone monopoly. And in Germany, they had a single company owned by the government that ran all their phone. Well, needless to say, they kept their rates high, they made a ton of money, and then they used that money to start buying phone companies around the world. And they're highly present in South America under different names. And they, of course, operate in America under the brand name T-Mobile.
T-Mobile.
So you have these giant firms, and they have hundreds of thousands of employees and market caps, in the 10 or 100 billion range. And those companies are what we call impossible to do business with. You can't find anyone in the company who's been there for very long. They have high turnover. No one knows what anyone else does because when you're in an organization that churns through so many people and has specialized, compartmentalized their information, the the person is not trained to know what the person next to them is doing. You're trained just to do this one small thing.
They're a
And those
cog in a big
companies,
machine.
the way they've structured those companies in order to have able to serve the number of customers they have and have so few employees and to be so incredibly profitable, which they are, what they do is they have divided their process into, say, 1,000 subtasks, and they train a person on
That's what
one
I
or
written.
two of those subtasks only. They don't train them on anything else in the process. So it's like working on, let's say you worked on a car, and the only thing you know how to do is to take the lug nuts off your wheel. That's all you've been trained to do. You do
Got
it
it.
fast, you do it efficiently, and you have 10 other people willing to take your job should you fall sick or not show up at work. They can replace you instantly. So they
Instantly.
have broken down the processes that they have into these tiny, tiny, tiny pieces, trained people on just a small fragment. And the problem is, as a customer of AT&T, is that yes, their system runs very reliably, and it's medium expensive. They don't make it outrageously expensive because that would stimulate too much competition. They they kind of keep a what I call fake an oligopoly, where you have a fake competition where you're 10%
Oligopoly.
less than Verizon, and then the other guy's 10% less than the AT&T. So that's the way the
Basically to
oligopolies.
avoid the FTC.
Well, the AFCC was staffed by the former chief counsel Ajit Pai of Verizon. So for the last, previous 8 years, Verizon was in control of the communications regulatory agency. And so the way it works in oligopolies is you have the what we call the lead dog. In dog sledding, there's one dog that that is in charge of all the other dogs. He's the lead dog. He's your strongest dog. He basically gets all the other dogs to follow their lead.
Got it.
Verizon is the big dog. They're the most profitable. They pay the highest dividends. And then AT&T prices themselves as just a few percent less than Verizon. And then T-Mobile comes in and says, well, I'll be 10% less than AT&T. And T. And that's the way it works. They're not running at a margin that is absolute. They're not saying, okay, I'm only going to make 10% like a supermarket runs on a very thin margin. That's not how these
Hmm.
Verizon and these other companies work. They just set an arbitrary price as much as the market can bear, and then the other competitors price it as a percentage of them. This is the same thing that happens in switches. Cisco
Okay.
sets the price, and then everyone else prices themselves as a percentage of Cisco. And if they think
Uh-huh.
they're better than Cisco, then they'll go at 110%, like Arista and some of the other ones. Juniper will say, oh, we have some special features Cisco doesn't have, so we can charge a little bit more. But that's how all these oligopolies work.
Uh-huh.
Having dealt with these companies, you hate them all when you do business with them. Everyone
Goes
hates
without
them
saying.
in their customer service. When you call customer service, you get sent to uh, a foreign land where the people have never used the service you're talking about.
Uh-huh.
They're in a boiler room. They have scripts to follow. They don't know anything, and they're not empowered to give you 5 cents back in a refund, which is usually the reason you call one of these companies is either something is not working or you want some money back. And they will never give you the money back through these low-level people. And by the way, this is another problem with the AI. They never empower the AI to give you any refunds or fix anything.
Oh, the chatbots do not even,
The
you know.
chatbots are the
Oh,
plague, and the fact that more people are adopting chatbots to eliminate the ability to call is a horrendous practice.
do not even get me
So
started
all
on
I
that.
can say is that the problem with AT&T and these other companies is they're so bureaucratic. They're not actually inexpensive, and they're impossible to do business with in the sense that when you have a problem, you can't get them to fix it or respond appropriately because you get sent to such a low level person who doesn't even know how to escalate it very well because you're
And
talking
that
about
is where
maybe
voice
five
carrier
levels
comes
deep.
in.
Pardon?
And is that where voice carrier comes in?
Well, no, then there's the medium-sized companies that go after specialized markets. There are people that specialize in, for example, selling telephone systems to school systems because that's a very political and governments. I mean, we
Mm-hmm.
have bid on governments, and at Voice Carrier, we don't even bother trying for government business most of the time because it is so corrupt and bribery and influence peddling are part of the government procurement system.
You forgot red tape.
Well, they often have silly requirements that they use to help steer contracts to specific people. And they'll
Got
say,
it.
"Oh, the phones have to be painted green," and it's like you don't
Uh,
have a green, but they do, and the reason they have a green phone is so they can get this contract. Anyway, that's in a silly example.
because voice carrier is not Halliburton or Lockheed Martin, comparing to another industry. As voice carrier, we do have this problem. But anyways, coming on to the commercial dealings of voice carrier, you were saying.
Well, in the general small medium business case, which is where voice carrier lives, the thing that voice carrier, the advantages that it has is that you can actually reach a customer service person located in the United States who uses the product itself all day long. So they're familiar with the product because they use it themselves in their daily work. And we don't have as many levels of hierarchy. And because we are not trying to eliminate human contact, we're not using chatbots and trying to hide the fact that we don't have enough customer service people. We have enough customer service people because if you are running a reliable system, you actually don't get that many calls. It's not that,
Obviously.
it's really about is your system easy enough to use and simple enough to use that you don't need to call people very much.
Mm-hmm.
If you have a problem with your system, then you're going to get lots of calls. So the approach that we use is let's not have people call us because they can figure out themselves, which means
Mm-hmm.
either you have sufficient documentation or the system is just easy enough for a person to walk up and use it.
Mm-hmm.
Most people use telephony in a very basic way. And although we have 100 features in our system that we give you for free when you buy it, I don't think people use but five of the 100. There are little codes that you can type in on your phone to do all sorts of clever things. And you just don't bother
We'll talk
to,
about these features in the next video.
sure. Anyway, so the advantage of, I do not understand myself why people are so reluctant to deal with smaller companies that are so dedicated and eager to take your business and are super competitive in price because they don't have the overhead. We don't have CEOs that take $30 million a year. You realize how many, how much of your phone bill has to pay for all the vice presidents that there are in AT&T. They have a gigantic bureaucracy. You look at their headquarters building, you go, what do these people do all day? Their network was built 100 years ago. What are they doing? You know, Alexander Graham Bell, he's long gone. What are all those people doing? Oh no, they're going to conferences and they're jetting around and they have private jets for their top level executives. There's a lot of fat in large American corporations, and our
Yes,
management is
sort of the
so
same
overworked.
thing, what like the banks were doing in 2006, 7, and 8, and their CEOs like Larry Fink and all those people from Lehman Brothers and AIG. So I think this is a problem with American corporationism rather than the business model. Say like corporate ruling, like corporatism, whatever you call it. I think that is the issue, and that is why we are doing this podcast. That voice carrier deserves the sort of marketing communication that it has never actually, even dreamt of. We need to get the message out because people are just being ripped off. So if you can, give any message, specific message to certain people that how voice carrier is actually delivering value to this supply chain, the supply chain of the phone industry.
The thing that people should reconsider is that if you pick a company that is dedicated to a particular service and they are medium sized or small and they're focused on this one thing, they're going to get very good at it.
Obviously,
And I often visit,
economies
watch
of
Jay
scope.
Leno's Garage, which is a television show where he shows his car collection. Now he
Jay Leno,
has one of the largest car collections in the world. And
marvelous.
what makes his car collection unique is that every single car in his collection is maintained in a ready to run state, and he can hop
Mm,
in one of them and drive out and have some fun in it. All the other
mm.
cars in these collections are in mothballs. They haven't been run in years. His cars, 100% are running. And in
Got it.
order to keep these cars going, because he's got, I don't know, 200 of them, they're all these manufacturers are defunct. So how does he get all the parts? How does he keep it running? He uses a network of over 100 specialist companies that just fix transmissions for antique cars. And he operates, he doesn't go to the main parts stores. He goes to specialists
Specialists.
who are brilliant at a particular thing. And that allows him to have the best running fleet of anyone in the world of antique cars because he's using this network of specialists. A lot of these are retired airplane mechanics and so on. The point
Mm.
is that knowledge is something that people accumulate over time.
Yes.
And if you're in a stable, well-run company and you
Mm.
accumulate more and more knowledge, you have all this skill and you can apply that to the customers. And the customers can benefit from that. And this idea that large corporations are somehow better because they're bigger is not true. They're not fun to deal with. They're
Agreed.
not actually competent in practice because you can't find a person. Yes, they may have an expert who knows everything, but can you get to that person? Or is that person so heavily shielded that you're never going to get to talk to them? And that's the flaw of picking the medium and large companies is that they're technical people who are their experts. When you really have a problem and you need someone to fix it and get in there and look at it, are they actually going to allocate that person to you? And in a smaller firm, you will get the expert.
Mm.
You
And
might
you'll
even get
find
the
that in voice carrier.
yeah. And so I believe that that people should stop worshiping size as if it guaranteed competency.
Hmm.
As the post office is big, the Department of Motor Vehicles is big. Are they competent? Are they fun? No. They're terrible. If you want a package delivered quickly, you go to FedEx.
Yes.
You don't go to the
DHL.
post office. So it's it's one of these things where people need to stop worshiping size. So let's talk about how how a hotel would pick a voice over internet provider. A hotel is a kind of a strange business. It has employees that work in the hotel that are in the administrative staff, so it's the same as any other small business. But then it has all these beds and rooms that the guests stay in. And they all have to have a telephone so they can call the front desk. And they could also do a little bit of calling. Because of past bad practices, people are not used to, they do not use the phone much in rooms anymore. They just use their own cell phone because they were ripped off in the past by hotels
Yes.
that that overcharged
Overcharging.
for, and so it ruined telephony in the hotel as a business source, as a revenue source, because people are avoiding it. And this is what happens when you engage in bad behavior. You get avoidance, and the market responds and counteracts that. So for a hotel, the phone system is an operating cost like electricity or utilities and so on. The first thing a hotel should do is figure out how many rooms it has and whether or not it can use the existing phones in the room. If those phones are, let's say, 20 years old and are analog phones, that's no problem. A phone, you can hook up analog adapters at the central hub in the
Mm-hmm.
building, and therefore you can reuse your old hardware. So you don't have to buy all new equipment. It's
Mm-hmm.
very expensive to rewire rooms for Ethernet, for example. It is also possible to use Wi-Fi phones, but now if you have a 200 room hotel, now you have 200 Wi-Fi devices all emitting radiation, interfering with each other. It's not the recommended thing. You're much
Mm-hmm.
better off with a wired connection always compared to wireless. Wireless adds a lag and an uncertainty, especially if there's interference. So you have to figure out how many rooms you got, how many of those phones you need, whether or not you need analog adapters. Then
Mm-hmm.
there's the issue of
And do
what
hotel
kind.
managers generally understand all of these? Because in my experience and or opinion, American hotel managers or owners do not know much of these technicalities. And I
Yeah,
learned that from you.
they do not understand some of these things, but they can recycle most of their equipment. So
Uh-huh.
the room phones, which is the most expensive thing, you could spend hundreds of dollars to rewire a room. If you have concrete walls, it's not easy to put new wires in a concrete wall.
Of course,
That's a
it is
very
not.
expensive proposition.
Yes, goes without
And
saying.
so if you can reuse your hardware, we certainly do that a lot in the hotel installation practices. Then you have your administrative staff, and this is the part where hotels are not really you saving money like they could. One thing that we see is that if you have a reception and let's say you have three hotels, you can share a reception by having all the reception calls go to one hotel,
Mm-hmm.
and you can give extensions to all the staff and treat them all as the same uh, PBX, what they call private branch exchange. So you can have them
Got
all
it.
be on the same phone system. If you have three hotels in a city, or even three hotels in a region,
Mm,
you can have them share, you can give extension 101, for example, for the front desk, or let's say
got it.
100 is the front desk. You can
Mm,
have the front desk be shared and operated at night and not have to have three front desks
mm,
operating 24 hours a day.
mm.
So you can, if you have multiple sites, you can share amongst yourselves. If you think of it as one integrated phone system, it's just three branches of the same company. And that, that's what all main large companies do. They have the single extension number. Maybe it's a 5-digit extension number, but it allows them to cover the whole United States with one phone system.
Got it.
Another thing that companies don't realize is that when you have a, a, a an account with voice carrier, we don't charge you based on how many phones you have. That's not our main determining factor in pricing
What
the
is then?
system. The main determining factor is how many minutes are you dialing out to the public
So it's
switch
basically
telephone.
charge per use
Yeah, we're charging basically like by the pound
by the.
of how
Got it.
much you actually shipped to the outside world. And if you don't ship anything to the outside world, you're not going to be spending very much money because,
Okay, so my question over here is that why do the Verizons and AT&T and T-Mobile do that? If they want to just rip off their clients, how is, the parable of capitalism that, competition brews efficiency? Why is that not working out in the market? For example, if people know that this is how they are being charged, which is unfair, and they have a competitor in the market, until and unless it's imperfect market, there are discrepancies in the information in the market, then obviously it does make sense. Otherwise, as an economist, I would say, at least even when there is not perfect competition, I would say that when there is perfect competition, but even when there is not, there must be some information skewness existing especially in the phone industry, in that niche, in the hotel industry, that people either do not know about this or they're just not, for some reason, the supply chain is disrupted. They're not, actually getting this service. My question is that.
okay, well, there's two reasons why people don't understand why a company like Voice Carrier, which does not charge per phone per month, the number one reason we don't charge for it is that the cost of having another phone sitting there registering every hour with the central computer, it sends a few packets to the central server saying, I exist, I'm extension
Mm-hmm.
103. And it
Mm-hmm.
does this every, it depends, it could do it every hour or it could do it every 10 minutes, depends
Mm-hmm.
on the how you program it. It's up to the phone itself to decide how often it wants to check in with headquarters. Your
Mm-hmm.
cell phone checks in with the tower every more than it once a second.
Oh, really?
It's constantly checking in with the
Uh-huh.
tower to see which tower should it be on.
Uh-huh.
So
I
it's
did not know that. Uh-huh.
looking for the tower and announcing itself. And when it checks in, it has to send a packet, and the packet is what contains the SMS messaging.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
the text messaging came out of the fact that the phones had to check in with the towers all the time, and they might
Mm-hmm.
as well use that for
Might
some
as well
use.
send messages. Got it. That's how would
But
that
they
that
used to
work.
charge 5 cents a message when it started out. But the truth
Yes,
is, it cost them nothing because they were already checking
they're
in with the.
already doing that. I got it. They're
So
already sending packets.
they managed to rip off to the tune of billions their customers because people had no idea that it actually didn't cost them anything to do text messaging.
Hmm.
So same thing with the phone, the SIP phones checking in. Let's say they check in every 10 minutes and say, I'm here, I'm in this room, I'm extension 103. And I give you, they sign in with the server and say, I'm extension 103. And then now the server knows how to get to them.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this means that actually you can take your phone and move it around. And so if you're an
Wow.
administrator, you can actually take your SIP phone with you and go to your house, plug it into your Ethernet, into your home network, and it will check in. and suddenly your extension is now in a different location. People don't realize that the SIP phone is actually a portable device like a cell phone. You just have to
Oh,
give it network and it will register automatically and then
uh-huh.
be communicate. So a hotel can have workers that, let's say you want to have a person take orders for room service. You just want to
Mm-hmm.
accept the orders and write and then send it to an email to the chef. You can have that
Mm-hmm.
person be in another country and do that. So SIP phones can be anywhere in the world
Mm-hmm.
and be part of your phone network. And the truth is, because the SIP phone checks in, and this is a completely automated process, and it's only a few packets, that this process goes on 24 hours a day. It doesn't really cost,
The company
mm,
anything.
I mean, it is a negligible cost, and it's ridiculous to charge someone $15 a month per phone for this check-in process, which is completely automated. And since the computers have to stay running anyway, it's not like we were going to save a lot of electricity by turning off the system at night. We can't ever turn off our computers that run your phone system.
Uh-huh.
We have to run 24/7.
Uh-huh.
So why would we charge you for something that actually has no incremental cost?
So you've
So
explained it very well for a technical person. Again, my question would be, is there information asymmetry in the market so that people, so because of which people do not know how to actually select their phone operating systems? Because hotels are being ripped off. I know IHG, Intercontinental Hotel Group. I know Marriott. I know Hilton. People over there do not know these things. The operations manager, the general manager, the IT, or they do not care. Maybe their employees, the owners
no, no,
have
no.
their
It's not that what they think is that by spending more, they get a better quality service.
ah
Okay.
because
So, I mean, my father used to have a saying, you get what you pay for if you're lucky. So the people who are
very
paying
well said.
$50 a month per phone
Hmm.
think that, oh, well, I'm getting a better service
Because
because
I
maybe
have the brand at the back, the AT&Ts, the Verizon, the T-Mobile. It's branding, it's marketing. It's
but it's the same thing as let's say you have empty boxes in your warehouse and you have this box and you haven't put anything in it yet and you haven't shipped anything yet. If UPS charged you $15 a month for every box that you have in your back room that hasn't shipped anything, that doesn't cost them any money. They haven't driven their truck and moved a box for you yet. It would be like that. And people are accepting that
okay.
as a standard practice. You haven't done any work that actually costs any money. The
That is what
only
we need to break.
time we spend money in voice carrier is when we have to talk to those horrible three phone companies. When we talk to AT&T or Verizon or T-Mobile, we got to pay by the minute for the connection. And 60% of all phone calls are to cell phones. So every
Hmm.
time someone makes a call from a hotel room and we talk to a cell phone, we got to pay the freight because now we've gone into AT&T's world and they're gonna we can't get it for free. We're not part of AT&T. We got to pay them the outside rate. So
Hmm.
so now we got to pass that cost on to you because we had to spend real money.
Yes.
But when you're just talking from let's say you're in room 101 and you talk to room 102, your friend who's also staying in the hotel, that
Mm-hmm.
costs nothing because it didn't it doesn't connect to AT&T. We don't have to pay any outside vendor. It's all on our network, which is we have a fixed price for all of our services. We have our own servers. We are renting racks in data centers. And so all of our costs are fixed. The more customers we have, the cheaper it is for everyone. But fundamentally, we only charge the customer when it's going to actually cost us something ourselves noticeable. Like when you make an outside call, that costs
Got
you
it.
money. Your inside calls are free.
This is a sponsored message. If you want to brand your video with MHP consultancy, then advertise with us right now. We shall focus your marketing communication to the targeted audiences that shall optimize your return on investment and generate you massive profits overnight.
And the other companies are charging you for something that actually is free, is a fixed cost for them and negligible. But people think that spending more money gets them somehow a better service. It's nonsense. Every one of us is using the same system. SIP telephony is an industry standard. It's an open source free standard, and any SIP phone can talk to any SIP PBX. You can mix any brand of phone you want. The customers can buy used phones on eBay if they want, or they can buy new ones. People are very germ phobic in general about phones, so they tend to buy new. But
Yes, they are.
they last 10 years. There's many companies that charge a maintenance fee. Cisco, they're the most outrageous phone company of all, Cisco. And they get
Hmm.
all the big contracts like Social Security Administration, which has 250,000 people in one phone system. That's the largest phone system in the United States, Social Security
Wow.
Administration. I mean,
Wow.
that's a lot of employees, and they're all on one phone system because
Unbelievable.
you got a lot of people, and they have a vast number of customer service reps. Anyway, they charge $15 a month as a maintenance fee for the phone, physical. Now, a SIP phone costs anywhere from $80 to $200. At $15 a month in 10 years, you do the math on that, you have paid for that phone many times over. So why would you have a hardware maintenance plan for a phone that lasts 10 years? Why? You're going to pay for the phone in 7 months,
One
but it lasts
reason
10 years. Why would you
this
do that? You're paying 10 times more for the phone than if you just buy the phone outright and just hope it doesn't break. Keep a couple of spares in the closet. It's
this is very
crazy
interesting.
what people are doing.
I was asking you why, now you're asking them why, and let's try to figure out. Maybe, we'll get their comments, we'll share them this clip or anything. But the thing is that microeconomics is also called price theory. If people do their cost benefit analysis according to the marginal benefit that they get, obviously, the way you're talking, that, if they had paid for the phone itself, they would never have to subscribe to their subscription plan that every month you need to pay for the hardware and all. But people obviously, even those who are well versed in economics, especially in microeconomics, they do not apply it in their daily lives. It's discovering the price in the market and measuring it against the benefit that they're getting from that service, and if they get any other service, or even if they do not get any other service. So my another observation over here of mine is that there's a writer called Nomi Klein. She writes basically anti-capitalist and anti-marketing researches books, and she's an author. She's a very big influencer in that industry. She wrote a book like maybe 10 years ago. I think it was 7, 8 years ago. No logo, which is against branding. So all of that, what we've discussed, is primarily branding. It's such I would say that I am the founder and owner. I am the director of MHB Consultancy, which is MHB Consultancy is primarily a marketing and management consulting firm. But this is something that I'll be, uh, willing and wanting to go against my own industry, that marketing should have its limits. It should not distort the value chain that make any industry optimal, giving people the most benefit. That is the uh, I would say the today's world system is not capitalist, because in capitalist systems markets should have optimal resource allocation, and price should dictate that what should be produced, what should be distributed. What marketing does is it distorts the views of the people. All of what we just talked about, and I must ask you, and you must check into that. The
All right.
next time
Anyway,
maybe.
the, the, the Cisco is an extreme example of where customers think of this as like a car that needs possible repair, and so they're buying an extended warranty and they're paying monthly for an
Mhm.
extended warranty. And what I am saying is that when a product costs $100 if you are buying a quote maintenance plan for $15 a month, in 7 months you've paid for a new one. And if they
Obviously,
normally last 10 years, that is not a good economic use of your money.
that is
It's
an
a fool.
understatement. That is a very bad use of your value, the value
You're
that you
much
give to
better
them.
off buying two spares.
Yes.
Let's say you have 100 phones and they last 10 years on average. And then let's say that one out of 100 are smashed in anger by an angry, because that's what happens. Most of the time when the phone breaks and you
It's
look at
because
it, you
of
go,
that.
I know why it broke, because someone
Mm.
hung up in a rage and smashed the phone. So
You're
you
not
have
giving me
two,
that promotion? Here it goes.
yeah, boom. So you have a couple of spares, and then don't pay a monthly fee. If someone is charging you a monthly fee for every phone, even when it's not being used, you're being ripped off. Now, the fact is that people are accepting that as, quote, an industry standard. There's no business reason why they have to charge for that, because it's not costing them anything to do anything. It's an empty box doing nothing. It doesn't cost, but you're paying for the electricity to run the phone. So if you're talking about a cost per month, maybe it's 10 cents a month for the electricity to power this 5-watt telephone. Still, you're paying for that in your own building. Why are you paying the phone company, Ring Central or one of the other competitors? Why are you paying them a monthly fee for a phone that isn't being used? Because that brings us into the next thing, is that when you are paying for a phone every month, you now want to minimize them. So you start getting stingy with the phones. You go, well, I don't want any more phones than I have to have because I don't want to pay that $15.
Hmm.
Now, when you're not paying that, you can reflip that and look at it in the opposite way. You can say, how can I use more phones to make my staff, which are way more expensive than the phones? I mean,
Got it.
your staff are 90% of your cost. The phone system in a hotel is not even 1% of the operating budget. So it's a
Hmm.
trivial cost. So
Hmm.
if you are sacrificing your productivity of your employees to save some 1% of 1%, that's a silly economic decision. And where this comes into play is work from home. This is the biggest change. During the pandemic, all these people started working at home. And then when the pandemic was over, people did not want to come back to work. And and of course,
We still
they're
do
now
not.
forcing in some companies to come back 3 days a week. But that
Yes.
still means 2 days a week they're not in the office. Now, does it mean they're reachable or not? It is not a good idea to have you call your cell phone, employee cell phones, outside of work hours. In
Yes.
Germany, it's illegal.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
And
The
laws like
Europeans.
this are going to creep into America sooner or later. Europe is ahead of America in this regard.
Oh, way ahead.
So what we should be doing, and we recommend people do, if you have a hotel, is let's say you have an administrative staff who works 3 days a week in the office, in the hotel, and 2 days a week at home. You take a phone, another phone, and you put one in there. You spend the $80 and you put another phone in their home
Hmm.
that is tied to the same extension. So that basically, when the phone rings, it rings in the hotel, in his desk, and it rings at home.
At
And
home as
whoever
well.
picks it
Got it.
up gets the call.
Got it.
So
Got it.
home office is where people should be doing. They've been avoiding doing this because of the monthly charge, because they go, well,
Hmm.
I'm in the office 3 days a week. I'm only gone 2 days a week. Why would I want to spend $15 a month for that occasional use? No, you want to get people not in the habit of not using the cell phone, of using their desk phone so that when they are off on vacation, they can turn it off and not hear the phone ring. If it's an emergency, yeah, you can call them on their cell phone. That's what cell phones should be for, is emergency
Agreed.
purposes.
Agreed.
So the voice carrier is ideal for companies that have work from home staff. They
Hmm.
should equip their home office with their own, it's basically a copy of the desk phone. That way they can reach everyone in the in the company with their standard extension numbers. If your extension 1022, then when I go home, I press 1022, or I have a speed dial button that dials you up, and boom, you stay more productive, more reachable, but at the same time, you have that distance but between work, that separation between work and home life, because
Hmm.
we're in a funny little place right now. We're going back to work, but we people have tasted what it's like to work from home, and even if it's only 2 days a week, it is a godsend for people with children to be able to stay home some of the time.
Yes, and generally those people as well who do not like the commuting. For example, you and I right now are working from home. And I generally work from home. When people ask me, where is your office? I tell them everywhere in the world. I do have physical offices over here as well, but I obviously love working from home because it saves the commute, it saves the planet because of the fossil fuels not burning, and saves me time. It's the most convenient thing. I do not have to get up and get ready and all. But coming to the next point, I do know that voice carrier has been serving like amazingly, obviously serving people, especially hotels as well, for the past 1.5 decade, and there have been huge, massive successes, as you were mentioning. At least by now, if the cumulative amount that has been saved by people, clients of voice carrier, must amount to millions of dollars, and we need to get that message out. So what would you ideally would tell to a hotel owner, or maybe a hotel manager? Okay, let's talk about a hotel owner who maybe has three hotels in a state or in a city, and he's not aware of these systems, and he does not have the time, because owners obviously are, they have multiple businesses. Even if they do not have multiple businesses, handling only that one business, hotel business, is tricky enough for them to be busy like 18 hours, 16 hours a day. In short, what can we tell to those hotel owners, or at least the hotel managers at large, that they need to do in order to first calculate their cost benefit analysis that they're facing with the current service providers and compare it to voice carrier? How can we get that message out?
Well, I'm not sure how to market something because that's not outside my expertise.
No,
But
technically speaking, I will do that.
yes, well, the hotel owners need to realize that every recurring monthly expense is a weight on their shoulders, and
Hmm.
they need to attack their fixed costs
Hmm.
to survive in
Hmm.
this more efficient world. And that, sure, go in your fixed costs in descending order of priority. Obviously, the staffing and the physical plant are the largest physical costs. Energy is probably much larger than the phone system. So we're way down on the list.
Hmm.
But the thing about this is that what they don't realize is that, unlike a lot of the staffing things, which are constantly an issue and changing all the time because people come and go, there's high turnover in the hospitality industry. In the telephony aspect, is that once you have found a lower price vendor, it will be the lower price vendor for the next 10 years. So really, yes, it's something that is kind of a minor thing. And maybe it's only going to save you 5,000 a year, but you won't have to do it for another 10 years because these things last almost indefinitely. So
Hmm.
you only have to do it once every 10 years, is find the correct vendor who is not going to gouge you on things, like not going to charge you for phones you don't
Especially in
use,
disasters.
and then you're done. So you will save, if you only save 5,000 a year, but you're going to do it for 10 years. So you've just saved the company $50,000. Well, maybe that's what your salary is. So you paid for yourself by just making a simple decision of switching a vendor that is almost invisible to your system. I mean, these things are very reliable. the SIP telephony devices are perfected at this point, and you can buy inexpensive ones because the fancy ones don't actually offer better phone calls. They just have bigger screens, which are useless. So
Hmm.
you don't need the fancy stuff. You
Got
don't
it.
need the fancy equipment. You just need the basic equipment that will suffice for what a hotel needs, which is only occasional use of a phone and a relatively small amount of minutes that are spent communicating to the outside world.
Hmm.
You still want to be able to direct calls to rooms from inbound, and you still want to be able to call out. And of course, you got to call 911, and our system notifies the front desk as well as making the 911 call because you've got to tell the emergency services where they are. If they show up in the hotel, and someone has called 911, you got to say which room because they don't want to hunt them down.
Obviously.
So that's a built-in feature that we don't charge for that, but it's an obvious thing that we do to facilitate the smooth operation of a hotel in the case of emergency. But
Hmm.
the real issue is that hotel people are very busy and they view the phone system as an annoying thing,
Minuscule.
but it does add up, and there's no reason to waste money,
Yes.
especially when it's going to be in
You
there for 10 years.
know, while listening to you, what I was thinking is that United Nations has the Sustainable Development Goals of 2030, and out of those, 12B and 8.9 are for sustainable tourism. So I believe that since hotels come under hospitality, which is a larger part of where tourism falls in, I will research into this that what SDG 8.9 and 12B mean is to reduce the environmental footprint. In short, obviously, they have so many points, but reduce the environmental footprint of tourism. And people, whether that is a local or international tourism, people go to hotels to stay. Airbnb culture is not that massive. So I'll research into that. I'll do some market research that if we can convey this message to people as well that you are just burning away money. It's just preposterous that people do not even know that these things exist, regardless of a company. Obviously, voice carrier is the pioneer in this. Voice carrier is doing the best service in that, but we need to actually step up the messaging on that, and I think today's corporate communications have been a very good effort towards that. We shall plan on continuing this series. Next time, for example, we can talk about how voice carrier's disaster recovery system is much better than any other service provider in the industry.
Yes, well, that is something that comes up in the larger hotels, is that they want to be able to survive hurricanes. This is, of course, a big deal in Florida because hurricanes are an annual reality for them.
Mm,
They have hurricanes, and depending if it gets your city and the telephone lines go down, you are knocked out, and maybe the internet
you're
goes
gone.
out. The question
Your
is, can
history.
your hotel still function in a disaster?
You're
And so
down and out.
that's an aspect, disaster recovery and resiliency, and how hardened are you? We can talk about the decisions that a hotel has to make about how much they want to spend and what are the best practices for that particular subject. It's a it's a it's a it's a deeper subject that does take some time to understand all the options that you can have in terms of making sure that you can survive a power outage or a loss of communication to the outside world.
Mm,
But fundamentally, uh, in many other parts of the United States, that's not a major issue, and most hotels don't really, especially in the middle part of the United States or in California, where we don't really have natural disasters. We don't have hurricanes, tornadoes,
mhm.
or floods. So the only thing California has is wildfires. And so in California, they really don't, we don't think about tornadoes.
Yes, because of the weather. So we can, explore other options and other characteristics of voice carrier. And today's podcast, what I believe, has been a very fruitful one in terms of just, starting to uh, thinking about how to optimize value chains at large. Obviously, voice carrier has been serving other industries as well, apart from hotels. But specifically speaking for hotels, we have a lot of other features and other aspects to it that Edward just explained today. Uh, the-
Well, let me just say one last thing. The
Got it.
reason those other companies charge $15 or $10 per month per phone is that gives them more advertising budget. So this is the same problem with branding. If you do a national ad campaign for your car and
Mm.
you talk about BMW as the ultimate driving machine and you run that ad 1,000 times a week in 100 of the largest markets on television, and your ad spend in the year is $100 million, who do you think is paying for that $100 million?
For
The
this. So
customer of the car.
keep that
We
point,
are
keep
not
that point,
spending, we do not have the advertising budget to drown out their nonsense
keep
because
that
they are
point.
not offering a better product. Their product is more expensive, and the only reason they're charging more is so they can have more money to
Let's
wait.
let's save that point
Advertise.
for the next podcast. For the reason being, today's
Yeah,
podcast has been very productive in terms of
yeah.
achieving our goal of, getting the message out,
Okay.
breaking the smoke screen of how in our field they say if marketeers spend even a fraction of amount that they spend on maybe branding or advertising on the product itself, they will never have to spend or maybe, work for their marketing. Uh, Apparently, that is not true, as we just witnessed that those three big brands, or even fourth one being Cisco, have the big planning and advertising budget. But the best product, the most optimal product, is not as well recognized as it ought to be. So we'll start our next podcast from here. Today
Okay.
we all must thank you, Edward, for his time.
Okay.
He is the vice president of engineering of one of the best companies in phone operating systems. He obviously is busy, as he mentioned his profile in the beginning of this video. So it was a thorough pleasure, Edward. Trust you me, it is nothing only to be said, but it was actually genuinely a thorough pleasure talking to you. We do wish you a good day ahead, and we shall be, planning for the next podcast soon. Anything you want to maybe say at the end of the podcast?
No, thank you for having me on.
Thank you, and once again, let's try to do a podcast separately on artificial intelligence and its bigger applications on the business management industry and the world. How about
Okay,
that?
great. Sure.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, Ed. Take care. Goodbye.